Hi, my name is Jennifer, and today we're going to review the simple present tense like we talked about last week. We're going to talk about actions that happen in general, adverbs of frequency, and then we're going to move on to today's lesson, which is about the simple past tense. So we're going to talk about the uses of the simple past tense, regular verbs and their exceptions, and then irregular verbs. Okay, so let's start today. So let's do a review of the simple present tense. Do you remember the general use of the simple present tense?
Actions that happen in general.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, what is something that happens every day for you?
I take a shower.
Good. I take a shower every day. So, this is something that happens in general. It's not happening in this moment, yet it's still the present tense. Do you remember the other example of present tense, another verb tense that we use to describe things happening now? So we have the simple present tense and then the present continuous tense, which would be I am taking a shower. So I am taking a shower in this moment. So this one, we talk about things happening every day. This one, in this moment. So to talk about the simple present tense, we often use adverbs of frequency. So do you remember what some of those adverbs are?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay. So for example, you would say, sometimes I take a shower. Sometimes I take a shower. Do you remember others?
Would never be
Good.
another.
Yeah. Probably this is not going to happen, but you would say, I never take a shower. So never. Also, there is always. Do you remember others?
Rarely.
Rarely. Yeah. Rarely. Usually. Good. So again, so all of these are indicators that you're going to use the simple present tense. So I never take a shower. I always take a shower. All of these things happen in general, happen every day, happen frequently. Any questions about that? No?
Would be like every day.
Every day? Yeah. Every day I take a shower, yes, but um, every day is a noun. So you would say, so these are all adverbs. So these adverbs support the verb. For example, sometimes I take, or I never take. So all of these words, except for sometimes, usually come before the verb. So that's what an adverb is. It supports the verb. So I never take. I always take.
I see.
But every day it would be different. Okay, good. So now we're going to talk about the simple past tense. Let's imagine first, to talk about this again, your routine. So what are some things that you do every day?
I have breakfast.
Okay, I have breakfast. What else?
I walk to the metro.
I walk to the metro. What else?
I drink a coffee.
I drink a coffee.
And usually when I get to work, I like to talk to my boss.
Okay, I talk to my boss. So all of these are in the simple present tense because they're things that you do every day. But let's imagine these things as happening yesterday. So when we talk about yesterday, we're going to talk about the simple past tense. So the simple past tense happens one time in the past and finishes in the past. So for example, these are the uses of the past tense, the simple past tense. So actions that start and end in the past. For example, let's take one of these. Yesterday, I talked to my boss. So yesterday only happened one time. I talked to my boss one time yesterday, and it ended yesterday. We also use the past tense, the simple past tense, to talk about habits in the past. So for example, something you did when you were young, or something you used to do, something you did last year that you no longer do. For example, for me, when I was a child, I painted. So when I was a child, I painted. So it's something, painting is something I did when I was young, but I no longer do. But what about you? What is something that you used to do? Can you think of a habit or
Yeah,
activity?
when I was a child, I used to swim
Okay.
in the sea.
Okay, good. So you could say, when I was a child, I swam
Oh.
in the sea. So I swam. Swim, swam. Paint, painted.
Why
We're
is
going,
that?
well, we're going to talk about that actually, because there's two uses of the simple past tense, or two common verbs. So one set is regular verbs, the other is irregular verbs. So in just a sec, we're going to, I'll explain that. The last use of the simple past tense is telling a story. So anything that is about the past, it could be a historical story. It could be news. It could be about your childhood, your past as a child. For example, long ago, or a long time ago, there was a farmer who lived in a small village. This could be like a story like a fairy tale, which would be like Snow White or some kind of Disney movie. We often see this. So the verbs here was lived. So that brings us to what you were asking about. So there's two types of simple past tense verbs. There's regular verbs and irregular verbs. Painted is a regular verb. The reason is because all regular verbs end in ed. So this is all regular verbs. Talked is another regular verb because it ends in ed. Lived is another regular verb because it ends in ed. The other verbs are all irregular verbs. Irregular verbs have another form. So irregular verbs, for example, swam. See, with the the simple present is swim, becomes swam in the past. So swam is irregular, and it forms its own spelling. It becomes a new word. So really, you have to memorize irregular verbs. They're a little bit more complicated.
But the present tense of lived is lived with a final E.
Exactly. So there are different exceptions to regular verbs. So that's a good point. So the first exception is for verbs that end in E. So verbs ending with E. The letter E. For example, live. Live in the present tense and lived in the past tense. So you would just add a D. So you add D to all verbs that end in E. Other verb examples are change. Change, you just add a D. Changed in the past. Prepare. So you would just add a D.
I have a question. What happened with feed?
Feed.
To feed the animals, for example. That's the present tense, right?
Yeah, I feed the animals, and the past tense is I fed the animals.
So it would
for
be
example,
irregular?
feed, fed is irregular.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So this is the first rule for, or first exception rather, for regular verbs. The second exception is for verbs that end with a Y. So verbs ending with Y. Let's erase this. So verbs ending with Y, for example, let me think of something. Study. Study ends in a Y. So with the verb study, we take the Y off. The Y becomes I, and then we add ed. Studied, studied.
Is it the same with worry?
Yeah, worry. Worry is the same. So worry, you take the Y, I-E-D, worried. Other verbs would be like marry. The verb marry, to be married. You would, marry becomes married. I-Y.
They usually go together, worried and married.
Worried and married. Okay, good. So, but what about, oh yeah, the final rule. I'm going to put that here. The final rule is doubling consonants. So let me explain that. So doubled consonants. So let's take a word, for example, stop. Stop in the present tense. But when we add, in the past tense, it becomes stopped. But we double the P. The reason is because stop is one syllable, and because the O is a short vowel sound. So stop. Also because there's a consonant, vowel, consonant here. So it's a little complicated, but in time you'll remember. You're going to remember these things. Other verbs are like step. Step, one syllable, and the E is a short vowel sound, so it's become stepped. Are there any other words you could think of? I know this might be difficult to think of another, or that you can remember seeing, or...
I'm not sure. Spot?
Spot. Spotted.
Oh.
Good. Yeah, because spot is one syllable, and the O is a short O sound, short vowel sound. Okay, good. So these, oh, and one more exception to this rule, actually, is that letters, verbs that end in X, W, X, and Y, we never double the consonant. So for example, the word fix is one syllable, and the I is a short I sound, but we do not double the consonant. It becomes fixed. So remember these letters. Again, this is something that you're going to memorize over time, so don't feel overwhelmed. You'll get used to the spellings. Okay, so let me erase this.